Along with North Korea's fourth nuclear test, which took place at the beginning of this year, as well as the fifth nuclear test in September, Korea's diplomacy has galvanized a lot of efforts to boost global cooperation on tougher North Korea sanctions. The National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee has played a significant role in stabilizing the dynamics of the Korean peninsula. Amid the increased inter-Korean tensions, Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee has focused on promoting cooperation within the international community and at the same time provided its vision for the unified Korea in the future. The committee has also paid a lot of attention on the voices of nearly 30,000 North Korean defectors in order to help them find jobs, which is critical for their stable settlement in Korea. Diplomatic strategy from various angles are also important to promote peace and unification on the Korean peninsula. What will be the next step for the Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee when it comes to preparing for the unified Korea amid the fluctuating dynamics of the Korean peninsula? Together with Saenuri Party lawmaker Hong Moon-jong, who is also a member of the Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee, Upfront discusses necessary government measures and ideal diplomatic strategy to better prepare for the unification on the Korean peninsula.
Well, more than ever before, Korea is in turmoil in and outside of the country. And today, we want to focus the outside of the developments, particularly foreign affairs and North Korean issues. And with that, for that purpose, we have a very special guest in studio today. He is a senior member of the ruling Saenuri Party. Lawmaker Hong Moon-jong is joining us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, glad to meet you here.
You're a very special guest for us because you were our first guest ever for this program, the time when I was not even a part of the team. So how does it feel to be back actually for the second time?
Yes, 2 years ago, our situation is a little different from this situation. So we talked about a lot about the unification bonanza. But after that, the North Korea changed and the South Korea political environment changed. So, I want to talk a little bit about the kind of changes.
We have a lot to catch up with, I suppose.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much.
On more personal side of you, lawmaker Hong Moon-jong, now you're part of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Before, previously, you were part of the science and the future planning and the broadcasting and communication. What is the difference? This is your kind of, in a way, new game, in a way. What's your first impression of having worked in the Foreign Affairs Committee so far?
Yeah, Foreign Affairs Committee is I'm one of the youngest congressmen in the committee because the old
all the ones that are there.
Okay. And after they finished several committees, they come there. So some of them are the chairman of the party, former chairman of the party,
right.
And former majority whip. So they have lots of experience. So in this Foreign Affairs Department, we are talking about national things, international things,
big things,
global things. So in the former my committee, we talked about national things.
Right.
What about Arirang TV? What about KBS? Kind of the specific one and the specific problem. But we are targeting a national problem, global problem. So we talked a lot. But no fruit.
And must be a tougher challenge to serve your district and your voters as well, if you're sitting there as well. But talking about the big picture, let's narrow a little bit if we can in terms of our focus. You're talking about global issues in your committee. Let's narrow our focus onto the Korean peninsula and inter-Korean relations. Your overall observation of the current status of inter-Korean relations, there are many different views out there, but as one of the, even though your age is young, you're one of the senior members of the committee. What is your observation about the inter-Korean relations?
Inter-Korean relation is strained a lot, compared to before. We usually use dialogue and carrot instead of a whip.
Right.
So that means, whenever the North Korea did something wrong, we just want to compensate them with a carrot, and we try to we want to talk with the North Korean people. So let them understand, what the situation, what they shouldn't do and something like that.
But carrot policy was the key characteristic policy during the previous government.
Yes.
But for the past about 8-9 years,
Yes, yeah.
with the conservative government, we have to say that we have been using maybe stick policy, if you will, or more tougher and stern policy, isn't it?
Yes, former President Lee, he's using a stick policy instead of carrot policy.
Right.
But they have a legacy of the carrot policy. So they have to clean the carrot policy and they have to implement the stick policy. This administration, we call it strong stick policy.
And maybe we can call it principle-based policy.
Principle-based policy.
Right.
So we are not giving you any carrot unless you are listening what we are talking about, what you like to talk about, what the international community talk about.
Right.
But North Korea has different ideas. They think without nuclear weapon,
Right.
they cannot survive in the future. So it doesn't matter whether we can have a carrot or we can have a dialogue.
Right.
It doesn't matter. We like to have the nuclear weapon. That's the only way they can survive.
Very important point right there. Some people here, I don't know whether this includes you or not, but in South Korea, not only talking about a preemptive strike, but some other people have talked about the need for South Korea to arm ourselves with nuclear weapons. What is your position on that?
Yeah, nuclear weapon is a very sensitive issue in Korea. As a matter of fact, in order to, many people, when I talk in the unification, the Foreign Affairs Committee, I says, let's think about the nuclear weapon. But practically, it's not easy to have the nuclear weapon in Korean soil, because first of all, we have to think about Republic of Korea and the U.S. relation.
Right.
U.S. keep on opposing the nuclear weapon in Korean soil. So we says if that's the case, we need to have a strategic nuclear weapon.
Right.
Or submarine
What about tactical weapons?
A tactical weapon, we have to prepare that kind of, because they have a nuclear weapon, we have to have a nuclear. For the people in Korea, living in Korea, I'm living in Korea.
Right.
They have a nuclear weapon.
Right.
We don't have anything.
Then are you advocating the idea of having U.S. tactical weapons back into South Korea, perhaps?
Many people say so. If we like to have a nuclear weapon, then we have to be excluded from NPT treaty.
Right.
NPT means it's kind of an international community.
Right.
Agreed on NPT program.
But what about the idea of not South Korea arming ourselves with the nuclear weapons, not that, but bringing back U.S. tactical nuclear weapons back to our soil? That's something that you would advocate as well?
We already had the tactical weapon before, as far as I understand. And right now, we don't have it. So actually, it's okay. The tactical nuclear weapon must be at least in order to protect the South Korea. At the same time, the North Korea cannot choose the long course of the better things.
I see. Another question is China here. For the past about 2 years, I suppose, South Korea has gone through big mood change. I guess last year, I think a lot of people here were kind of optimistic that we are very close with China when President Park Geun-hye stood at Tiananmen Square with their huge event for the national celebration. And all of a sudden, since then, things are kind of like falling apart. And with the THAAD issue, we saw a completely different face of China here. And some people are coming back with the voice about blaming China for the failure of North Korean pressure tactic, pressuring North Korea, asking them to refrain from the nuclear weapons. It failed because of China, a lot of people are saying. What is your perspective on that? How do we manage our Chinese relationship with China? What is the role of China? How should we see the country?
Yes, we have to understand, the North Korea and China is we call it blood alliance. During the Korean War, they sent 500,000 people, more soldiers to the Korean War. They had that kind of strong tie between the North Korea and China. So whenever North Korea has a problem,
Right.
many the international world talk to China. You can solve the problem. You are blood alliance. You have a kind of channel to talk with North Korea. Somehow, China doesn't want to have that kind of role because the North Korea can be a buffer zone for the Beijing
Right.
in the international world.
Right.
Okay, the North Korea doing such a kind of bad things. We cannot even control that kind of the bad things happening in North Korea.
Right.
So in order to solve that kind of problem, international world do something
Right.
for the North Korea and China. So they are using the North Korea as a buffer for Beijing, and that keep on saying U.S. you are the problem. You have the conflict between North Korea and the U.S. Because of that, they like to have a nuclear weapon. Because of that, they are doing such a kind of bad things.
That's Chinese perspective.
That's
Okay.
Chinese perspective. They're kind of the spokesperson. Keep on saying that the U.S. you are the one who made all the difficulties, all the problems in this area.
Right.
We are not. We are supporting international world. we are trying to control the
Right.
North Korea.
Right.
So North Korea do something very weird things. That's not my fault. They're kind of their autonomous regime.
Right.
They're doing that things.
Right.
What can we do? But still, they have that kind of the kind of mind. Two minds, I say.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right.
So
The desire to keep North Korea
Yeah,
in place as a
exactly.
buffer zone, but at the same time, the desire to keep the stability in the region, while North Korea continues to do things to destabilize the region. So China is caught in between the two different minds.
And at the same time, whenever the North Korea do something, weird things,
Right.
the South Korea
Right.
keep on begging China. They are doing that kind of bad things.
do something about it.
Yeah, do something about it. And they say, they are in kind of different countries.
Right.
Even though they can't control the North Korea, they just use North and South Korea
Right,
for their own the political purposes.
Right. So your point is, China has their own problems in terms of not being able to fully control the situation here. So we should not expect as much from Beijing in
Yeah.
terms of doing things for us.
Yeah. However, Beijing is very important, to solve the peninsula
Right.
problem.
Right.
But you have to understand that kind of background. Then what whenever they have a problem, what we can do, what the China can do, and what the U.S. can do.
Right, right. Okay, okay. That's one big issue we can continue to talk about, but for the interest of time, let's talk about what has been happening here inside Korea regarding North Korea recently. That is, President Park Geun-hye has recently increased her emphasis on possible collapse of North Korea, and especially she highlighted the current situation where there is a rising defections, especially among North Korean elites. And I think she has reminded us the possibility of seeing more of this kind of, defections and so on. Do you agree with her perspective in terms of the possibility of sudden dramatic change in North Korea?
The Minister of Unification, Mr. Hong, says, the North Korea has a very weird symptom about defection. When I visited Dubai, the 2,000 North Korean workers work there.
Right.
And among them, they have a kind of strange atmosphere. Can be detected. The people says because the main North Korea has a political problem.
Right.
Inside the political problem, I cannot explain all of that, and especially because of the internet. Many North Korean people cannot be isolated.
Right.
Yeah. They can hear, they can listen, and they can watch what the international world is doing. Even
Right.
though totally controlled by the government,
Right.
still they have some kind of need, the space to see and to experience outside of North Korea. And Mr. Kim, he's still young, but in order to have a strong grip,
Right.
he do some kind of bad things. He kind of eliminates the many elite members. They are kind of scaring. They don't know what he's doing, what he wanna do. So they, we have the kind of symptom. So this year we have already lots of, almost 600 refugees. I mean, the defectors, from North Korea.
Right.
And among them, many elite people. And still, many elite people are knocking South Korea in order to be defected. So, the symptom is different. And, so the President Park, talking to North Korea,
Right.
come, we have a freedom, we'll protect you well. And, at the same time, President Park talked to our South Korean people.
Right.
The symptom is not, it's kind of lots of symptom. We have to prepare lots of defectors, from now on.
I'm talking about the preparation of such a flow of increasing flow of refugees and defectors here. What do we have in place? For instance, you have mentioned considerable rise, especially this year, of the people who have left North Korea and coming down to South here. I mean, not down would be wrong idea because they come through different channels. But what do we have in place? Do we have legal and the physical infrastructure, sufficient infrastructure ready for them? Or is President Park actually talking about the need to further increase such infrastructure? What's going on?
At this moment, if they come to the South Korea,
Yes.
then they have 12 weeks of orientation and 5 years support house and living cost.
Right.
And then they can survive after the 5 years.
After 5 years, are they on their own, pretty much?
Still the government give them some kind of information and some kind of help, financial help. But according to the South Korean regulation and law,
Right.
after 5 years, they have to do their own things. We are not going to give them fish. We are going to teach how to catch the fish. So that's kind of policy. But we at this moment we have 30,000 the defectors from. I don't know. I should say defector or refugee. What's the right term for that?
Right, right.
And 3,000. But at this moment,
Right.
We are expecting lots of more, people
Okay.
from North Korea.
Okay.
In order to, consolidate that kind of lots of person, we have to have a new law. Maybe we have to have the village for them at the first year.
5 years.
5 years they stay there. They experience what is the capitalism,
Right.
what South Korea really means, democracy, whatever. So we have to pass the law.
Okay.
So we have to have the large, the big area. For the lots of people from North Korea,
Right.
and if they come suddenly,
Right, right.
abruptly,
Right, right.
then we have to prepare that kind of, the plan.
Picture seems to be clear, but however, though, even after 5 years, we hear that there is a considerably high level of unhappiness or dissatisfaction on the side of these people who left North Korea because the society is so different.
Yes, that's
and,
correct.
problem of adjusting themselves to this new, you said, capitalist system and very competitive society. They seem to be suffering, right? Is there something more fundamental way of giving them more meaningful help? Because right at this point, the impression is after leaving this government protection and care after 5 years, they go into a real difficulties.
Yes, yes.
So you're talking about the first 5 years, the need for greater support during the 5 years. Do you have any vision in terms of how to help them after 5 years?
Yes. When I visited in Germany, the East Germany,
Eastern part of Germany,
Eastern
right.
part of Germany, people keep on complaining. The
Right.
government to do nothing for.
After all these years,
Yeah,
after all these
years. West Germany is such the affluent country,
Right.
and they have to support more for the East, but they are not doing that kind of things. They keep on complaining. I heard that. Even the newspaper said, East German people, former East German people, keep on complaining. We had a kind of same situation. Not easy to, especially the old people, if they maybe more than 40 years old and
Right.
something. then it is very hard to adjust to democracy.
I see.
It is very hard to adjust to capitalism. 5 years is not enough. So the government, the government has to make lots of plans and lots of things, for the people from the North Korea.
Right.
But the thing is, the Korean,
Right.
the South Korean, the citizen, people must take care of the North Korean people, refugees, defectors. Without that, we don't only government the help, government plan. We cannot take care of all the people.
I see.
Among young people in Korea, they don't care much about the unification.
That's true.
Because if we unified,
Right.
the financial
burden for them.
financial burden and the emotional burden.
Right.
How can we deal with that kind of burden?
Right.
We have already we have our own problem. We have East and West problem.
Right.
We have the aged and the young
Youth
problem.
unemployment already
Yes.
serious in this society.
So they don't
right.
care much about the unification,
I see.
and they keep on blaming. We are not spending too much money for the people from North Korea. So, in order to have a really wonderful unification, the people living in the South Korea
Right.
has to change their mind.
see.
They are our people. We have to live with them eventually.
So you're talking
Well,
about possible need for maybe social movement, social awareness campaign.
It's
possibly.
very important.
Okay. But having said that, however, you said what government can do is quite limited because we have limited resource and all that kind of stuff. Makes perfect sense. But I was just thinking about when you're saying that, I was thinking about the United States style of affirmative action, especially when we have these highly educated North Koreans. Not all of them are highly educated, but they are sometimes former doctors, scientists,
Okay.
and professionals. Is there any possibility for the National Assembly here to further support in establishing more legal structure to allow more of the affirmative actions for the previous elites of North Korea when they come down here? So, for example, making it easier for the former doctors in North Korea having their jobs as medical doctors here in Korea, for instance. Would that be possible?
Yeah, I think government has to prepare that kind of the legal procedure. So the kind of the professors and doctors and the elite people can there have an equivalent job in South Korea. Actually, not this the 20th Assembly, 19th Assembly, we had Mr. Cho, he member of the National
former North Korean
Yeah,
himself.
yeah. He came from North, but he was a member of the the National Assembly.
Right.
That kind of the things must be happen in South Korea. But as I said before, affirmative action is very important. But first of all, the young people.
People have to accept it,
Yeah,
right?
have to accept
South Korean
it.
people
Yeah.
have to accept it.
If they become a professor, if
Yeah.
nobody respect him, nobody listen what he is
Right.
talking about,
Right.
then it's useless. That kind of law. So we have to accept them, and we have one nation,
Right.
one people. With unification, we have future. Yeah, that kind of the vivid and the ideas for our unification.
I think you have just pointed out a very fundamental point about our dilemma and the work that needs to be done regarding future unification here. What do you see in terms of what you can do and what your colleagues can do to generate greater consensus at the National Assembly ahead now, going forward?
So unification is very important for our country's future. We
Right.
have to be unified. But every 5 years, we have election. So party talking about election.
Right,
So whenever they have an election,
Right.
the people in Korea, they have so many different ideas.
Right.
So party says, the thing which can be satisfied, by the voters.
Right.
That means we have so many different ideas. The ideas is kind of conflict each other.
Right.
That's the big problem. So I talked to the opposition party. Okay,
Right.
We like to have a unification, but your opposition party like to have a unification. the ruling party have a opposition. In the future, we don't know who is going to be a ruling party or the opposition party.
The issue will remain the same, so therefore we have to prepare whether we are opposition or ruling or minority or majority. We have to think about this issue.
Yeah,
That's what
in
you're
order
saying.
to think about the unification policy,
Right.
you have to, ironically, we have to live in politics.
Right.
No opposition party.
That's a hard argument to make.
No ruling party after 10 years.
Right.
20 years.
Right.
So we have to prepare that.
It's our problem.
It's our problem.
Right,
So, we
I
have
see.
to make a consensus in order to have a long-term plan. Not easy, but we have to do that. But, we like to have that kind of a consensus. So within the parliament, I talked to the speaker of the parliament. Okay, it is very important agenda.
Right.
So, we don't care much about, opposition party, ruling party. Whenever the person to talk about, say, unification policy,
Right.
10 years later, 20 years later,
Right.
gather together, make a consistent policy.
Consistency,
So
right.
North Korea think, okay, they have a policy, the policy will not going to be changed.
Right.
They stay there continuously. So anyway, in order to have something good relationship with South Korea, we have to cooperate with that policy.
Your idea is very clear, and I'm sure our viewers feel now very sympathetic towards you with all the efforts that you're making at the National Assembly here. Well, I guess we have talked about a lot of heavy stuff so far, and I'm almost like running out of breath in a sense, listening to you all these serious things about North Korea. Let's talk about some of the, if we can, lighter things. For instance, recently you have visited Africa and the Middle East as a part of National Assembly audit, which takes place every year. And since you're a Foreign Affairs Committee member, you had to choose one of the areas, and you chose bravely, I should say, Africa and Middle East, because it's so far away. How did it work out? What did you see there? Your main mission is to check what's going on at our missions, overseas missions, right? And what did you see? What was your overall impression there?
Yeah, I visited the Africa and the Abu Dhabi and the Dubai countries, Middle East countries. At first, when I met the ambassador over there,
Korean ambassador?
The Korean ambassador in South Africa, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Zambia, Nigeria, they keep on saying Korea is a totally different country. When they start their diplomat, nobody knows about Korea.
Right.
Nobody cares much about Korea.
Right.
Korea is a poor country, just finished the Korean War.
Right.
The GNP is like around 100 and something.
Right.
But right now, Korea is a totally different country. They respect Korea. They like to learn from Korea.
Right.
So they are so proud of the Korea. So I feel like we have to do something more. The African country and the Middle East country.
Right.
So it's like we have lots of things to do in Africa and in the Middle East. Yeah.
I mean, like I see myself increasing number of students coming from Africa and also Middle East to learn about Korea's experience. And perhaps one of the most effective diplomacy we can project for the future in the long run is do more about bringing those future young leaders of the region to get them acquainted with Korea's experience and so on. And I know the budget has increased recently, but perhaps would you say it's a better idea to further work on that, to expand the programs of bringing future young leaders from the region to share our experience?
Of course. UK use the foreign student policy for a long time.
Right.
America, they are using the foreign students,
Right.
so returning to their country, and they are kind of evangelists of their culture, and even American pop song. And
Now we have a K-wave,
Yeah.
Korean songs and Korea wave, Korean dramas, and so they're making difference.
Of course.
Right.
So, the Africa somehow, Africa is like supported by the China. Right now, they are investing lots of money
Yes.
in Africa.
Right.
So African people really appreciate what China has done for their continent. But however, they have a feeling like they have a bad experienced before, so-called colonialism.
Yes.
So they don't want to be treated as a second country.
Right.
They just like the equivalent with like in Korea.
Right.
They kind of the work together. We can the progress together.
Right.
We can have a bright future together.
Right.
They feel like the China and Japan. They're spending lots of money. They're lots of people work with the African people. Sure, they like to have that kind of relationship with China and Japan. But they're worried about,
Right.
we don't want to be colonized by that
Right.
kind of.
They want to have their alternative.
Yeah, alternative.
Right?
Alternative is Korea.
Right.
They have IT strong. They have Taekwondo. They have K-pop.
Right.
And
Right.
they're a small country, but they're very having the bright future. So we like to grow with the South Korea, our country. So that kind of feeling can spread to the all on the continent. So we have to understand the situation. So we accept more students. We spend more money
Right.
for the continent.
But the thing is, money is a separate question, maybe, perhaps, because we are not China. Our economic size is not as big, and our economy is not as big as Japan here. So I guess one alternative we found is knowledge sharing. Like Korea's experience, what Korea knows and stuff. Did you happen to see there in the front lines and the field that this knowledge sharing effort is actually making difference?
Yes, when I talking about the money, we like you said, compared to China and Japan,
Right.
our economy is, it's not,
Not as big as theirs.
affording that kind of lots of money. But at least, like we have the cultural center in the continent, in
Right.
the African continent.
Right.
The many countries need it desperately. So I already told you, we have Taekwondo, we have K-pop,
Culture.
cultures, even in the Semaul movement, they want to learn. So through that kind of the investment, like the Korean culture system, I
Right.
mean the kind of the Taekwondo system,
Yes.
whatever. So they can learn from Korea. As soon as they learn, and they have a kind of deep relationship
Right.
with Korea. And whenever they do something, they think Korea first.
Actually, while you're listening to what you're saying here, I think about you as being in a perfect position for those kind of issues, because you were part of the the broadcasting and communication, which is a part of the cultural activities that we do here. And then now you're in Foreign Affairs Committee. It's interesting. And here I have a note here. During your visit, you were also in South Africa. And relating back to one of the previous discussions we have had, the nuclear issues. We understand South Africa is perhaps the one and only country so far that has abandoned their nuclear weapons. Share with us a little bit briefly on that side, what you have learned there, and if there is any implication we may draw South African experience to the North Korea's case.
Yeah, I met an officer of the South Korean, the government.
South Africa.
In South Africa, the government officer. He's happy about they don't have the nuclear weapon anymore. As soon as they gave up the nuclear weapon,
Right.
the international community warmly welcomed them. They have a good relationship with the international community. Of course, they have Cuban crisis, Angola crisis before.
Right,
So
right.
at that time, for their own survival, they need a nuclear weapon. But after they give up the nuclear weapon, then that kind of outside the problem solved by international community. So the outside help, international community's help is more helpful than just the nuclear weapon. So I'm keep on talking to the North Korea.
Yes.
If you give up the nuclear weapon, your survival is more guaranteed than having the nuclear weapon in the North Korea. But the North Korea keep on thinking, without this, we cannot survive. Only with nuclear weapon, our existence can be recognized by the international community. That's not correct.
So we need more efforts to systemize South African experience to be better and more easily shared with North Korea, perhaps.
Yeah, so
as their case.
So, yeah, and my committee,
Right.
unification and the Foreign Affairs Committee, I talked to the person. Yeah, the South Korean case.
Right.
We talked to North Korea.
Right.
Okay, after they gave up, the international problem solved, and their country's being is more secured.
Right. I see. And going back to getting to the last part of our discussion, I want to briefly go back to what you mentioned at the beginning of this discussion. That is, in your Foreign Affairs Committee, you're dealing with very big global issues. One of the things that's in my mind and in many of Koreans' mind, actually a small number of Koreans' mind, is the climate change. Climate change has been an issue, important issue for the leaders of not only United States, but China and some of the leading nations around the world. And I understand Korea is the 7th largest emitter of greenhouse gas. And after the Paris Agreement last year, the world community agreeing on what to do about reducing greenhouse gas emissions here. Korea is number 7 in the world in terms of emission. We're not doing anything about it, as far as I know.
Yeah.
It's in the National Assembly, and you're at the Foreign Affairs Committee. What is going to happen? Tell us.
We keep on saying that we are the seventh.
Right.
Yeah, we are not proud of that kind of the ranking.
I mean, all the top players, United States, China, India, Europe, they all joined to ratify the treaty. And is it our time to make a move?
Yeah, and the President Park also says she cooperated with the international community and ratified that action. So. We'll do the Congress, will support the President Park's the decision, and of course, we have to cooperate with the international communities, but our industrial concern is they keep on saying we have to wait a couple more years, and then they keep on saying that
I see.
But international community is more important than the saying from the inside. So we'll keep up with the international rule and criteria.
Okay.
Yeah.
You don't see any strong opposition from the opposition party here?
No.
So it's a matter of time?
Matter of time, and we have to do that. And we have to show our respect to what the international world says.
Assuring words for those people who are watching us from other parts around the world
yes,
about what
don't
Korea
worry,
is
we'll
doing
do that.
about climate change.
So we'll do that. I will talk in the Congress. Let them do.
That's a reassuring word.
Yeah.
Very briefly, we have to wrap up our discussion here. What is your vision now ahead as we go forward? The remainder of the year, and perhaps for this Park government, the last year of the 5-year term next year. What is your vision? What's your commitment? Very briefly.
Yes. The international issue is so complicated. Especially we have a presidential election next year. So we'll fight a lot, and opposition party and ruling party. But unification policy, we shouldn't fight. We have to have, like I said before, consistent policy, long-term policy. So it can join all the South Korean parties, as well as North Korean people eventually in the future. So I want the people who are concerned about unification. It's without unification, we cannot be a global leader. Many socialists, many social, and I mean the doctors and says that we have to have in order to be a global leader, you have to have the unification. So unification is the things we have to do in the future. So in order to do that, we can fight each other in the domestic things.
But we have to keep in mind the central issue.
Central issue is the unification, and for this purpose, we have to do our best to have a consistent and long-term policy, so everybody can join and everybody can do whatever they can do for their purposes.
Lawmaker Hong Moon-jong, I think you have shared with us a very clear idea about your focus and our priorities, and our viewers have learned, I'm sure, a lot about the vision of the ruling party as well as what is going to happen in our legislature. So I have to thank you on behalf of all our viewers. I have to thank you big time for your wonderful contribution today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And
It's my
as I
pleasure.
said, I'm sure the viewers have learned a lot about what's going on and in this program in Korea. And so likewise, next time when we talk about important issues for Korea as well as the world, we want to ask you come back to this program Upfront. Until then, this has been Kim Byung-ju. Goodbye.